You have joined yet another episode of the Frank Figliuzzi Show, and I'm grateful you're here. And as I keep saying, the timing is everything. We have a guest today that just kind of we didn't try to get Secretary Griswold and time it this way, but there's so much going on in the role of Secretary of State and concerns about the midterms that I can't think of a better Secretary of State to have with us. I want to briefly take some time to fill you in because I learned some things as I was preparing to introduce the secretary that I think are worthy of sharing with you if you don't already know. So 2018, Secretary Griswold ran for Secretary of State of Colorado. She defeated the incumbent Republican. She became, at that time, the first elected Democratic Secretary of State in Colorado since 1963. Holy cow. And the first woman from the Democratic Party to ever hold the office. Wow. Never too late, I guess. You may know that she filed suit to prevent Tina Peters from being able to oversee elections in Mesa County in 2021 and 22 due to Peters' attempt to interfere in the 2020 U.S. election. Yes, we're going to go there. Griswold won a second term in the 2022 election with 55% of the vote. Back in September of 2023, 6 voters filed a lawsuit in Colorado State District Court seeking to prevent Donald Trump from appearing on the state's ballot. Boy, doesn't that seem forever ago, because of his role in the January 6th insurrection. And Griswold was named as the respondent in that suit because of her official capacity. The judge there ruled that Griswold must keep Trump on the ballot, but stated for the first time ever in writing, a judge stated by a preponderance of the evidence that Donald Trump incited the January 6th insurrection. This went to the Colorado Supreme Court, and they said Trump is disqualified from the primary ballot, reversing the district court's ruling. But the Supreme Court of the U.S., you know where this goes, later ruled that individual states can't prevent a candidate from appearing on a presidential ballot. Not surprisingly, Republicans in Colorado tried to impeach Secretary Jena Griswold. That did not work. And this is going to be key to our discussion. For about 4 years or 5 years, Jena Griswold served as the chair of the Democratic Association of Secretaries of State, helping boost Democrat Secretary of State candidates in battleground states. Okay, we've got a lot to talk about. Let's bring in Secretary of State from Colorado, Jena Griswold. Secretary, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Frank.
I'm thrilled, and I know we've got limited time with you, so I'll apologize for kind of rapid fire questions. But I've got a bunch of them because, gosh, the Secretary of State role is becoming so important. And you know what I didn't mention is you are running for State Attorney General in Colorado. How is that going, first off?
It's going great. A week ago, Tuesday, actually won the nomination to be the Democratic nominee. So it's just, it's a really humbling experience, but I would say Democratic AGs and Democratic Secretaries of State are key to saving the nation. So I'm really looking forward to winning, working hard, winning ultimately the election in November, and continuing to try to defend our country from the forces that we're seeing wanting to pull it apart.
Yeah, key positions, both AG and Secretary of State. And not to mention, we need to vote. We need to absolutely vote for state Supreme Court justices as well. Good luck with that campaign. We'll keep an eye on that. Gosh, there's a lot going on. Real quick, since we're talking about running for office, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the state of Maine and the Senate race and what's going on with Graham Platner. Your quick thoughts on that?
Well, I think Platner needs to step aside. He needs to step aside. He is not a strong candidate at this point, but more importantly, like, the Democratic Party cannot allow candidates who have credible allegations of abuse, sexual misconduct, and rape of women.
Yeah.
That's a non-starter. So I would like to see him step aside. I think it just underlines the need to have more women in public life. We've actually never had a woman governor or U.S. senator in Colorado, women are underrepresented. Just sexual assault or sexism still is rampant, and I think at the end of the day, he just needs to get out of the way.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer almost for at least most of us. It does because of my FBI background, 25 years. It also raises the larger question of background and vetting, right? That's something I did for a living, so to speak, and even led and conducted very sensitive background investigations for presidential nominees. What's broken down here? What is not working with the vetting process? And is it here's a question: is it virtually impossible, garbage in, garbage out, to find every piece of derogatory information in someone's life when they're not necessarily being forward?
Well, you would probably be a better person to answer that question than me, right? I never ran or have never formally been a nominee for U.S. Senate, so I don't know what that vetting process looks like. But I would say for the more sophisticated races where there is money, people need to be formally vetted to avoid these types of situations. With that said, it would seem to me you're not going to get everything on someone. If someone is sending a personal text message that is there to be exposed later in time, no public vetting is going to find that unless the person actually tells you. I do think it's like a balance, right? Because obviously we cannot have Democratic candidates who are where there's credible allegations of really bad sexual misconduct. At the same time, I'm 41 now. I remember maybe I grew up pretty blue collar, so I got a cell phone maybe a little later than many of your viewers. But with people growing up in the digital age, people also need the space to be human and make mistakes and, live their college life. And also, I do think we need to accept that elected officials, candidates are human. But there's a line: sexual assault allegations, credible allegations of sexual assault is way too far, right?
Yeah, that's a great observation about the digital world we live in and not being able to delete some things. But yes, it seems we're way beyond that with Platner. All right, let's get to, I know my viewers, Secretary, and I know they're very keen to hear from you on Tina Peters and Governor Polis. And you did not shy away from stating your opinion. I read your public statement on the pardon of Tina Peters, and she's Mesa County. What was her role in Mesa County at the time?
So in Colorado, we have elected county clerks. We have 64 counties, 63 of them have elected county clerks. They're the ones who actually administer the election. Me as Secretary of State in my office, we're like the referees, we oversee it. And we have the ability to go in if needed. So Tina Peters was the elected county clerk. She made mistakes right out of the gate, but like election administration is hard. We want people to succeed. But come 21, we discover that there's some type of security issue happening in Mesa County. We actually saw one of the far right leaders push out the passwords to Mesa County's voting equipment. So we didn't know exactly what happened. I sent my civil servants out there to do an investigation, and it was a whole thing. There was a rock slide, the canyon was closed, they had to get onto the state planes, go out there, and I told them once they arrived into Grand Junction, just hold at the airport, because I wanted them not to go in alone, to go in with either attorneys from the county attorney's office or from the district attorney's office. So when that was lined in, they went inside, we started the investigation and ultimately determined that Tina Peters allowed a third party to come in under a false identity, and ultimately she compromised voting equipment, trying to prove Trump's big lie about the 2020 election.
Expensive voting equipment that, correct me if I'm wrong, needed to be replaced, costly stuff, right?
Yeah, it was like $1 million that I ended up decertifying the voting equipment for a couple of reasons. Ultimately, it just wasn't, up to the task of being used in an actual election. And by the way, all of this happened before an election. We discovered it, if I'm remembering correctly, August of 2021. So we were able to get in there. There was many steps, but ultimately I appointed Oversight, removed her from direct election oversight, and I appointed someone else. And ultimately appointed my 2018 Republican opponent, who was the incumbent Secretary of State that I ran against in 2018. Because that county, number one, I have a really good relationship with the former Secretary of State. But that county is a conservative county. It voted majority Trump in 2020. So I wanted to put a Republican in there where there could be confidence, but we would also have confidence that the election was being overseen properly and conducted properly.
Right. And so ultimately, to fast forward, Tina Peters gets convicted of 4 felonies. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 4 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. So she got a pretty, substantial charges, right?
And a prison sentence.
A substantial prison sentence. She was sentenced to 9 years of incarceration. So it broke down to 8.5 years in prison and 6 months of jail. And Trump starts leaning in. He becomes president again, first day, pardons the January 6th insurrectionists, 1,600 people who stormed the Capitol. They're out of there, right? They're pardoned. And then he starts really fixating on Tina Peters. She's the only person left that we believe in the entire country facing any type of accountability for attacking American elections. Trump starts retaliating against the state. Trying to move Space Command, trying to get rid of our big climate research center, holding up millions of dollars in grants for the poorest of families, and it just keeps on coming. Meanwhile, he tries to illegally pardon her himself, but he can't.
For a state crime.
For a state crime, which he can't do. So that was all litigated. He tries to get her transferred into the federal prison system. And then there's some, cuckoo conspiracy that they're going to put her under witness protection, get her out of the federal. So he keeps on pushing. And ultimately, I would say that Governor Polis gave in. He gave in. He did not pardon her, but he commuted her sentence. I just think it is a horrible decision. I would with confidence tell you that the vast majority of Coloradans think it's a horrible decision. And now Tina Peters is out, and she's back to her antics of trying to undermine American democracy.
She's still spouting conspiracy theory type election fraud nonsense.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And last Tuesday, not yesterday, a week from yesterday, I mentioned our elections. Our primary elections. I was honored to win the Democratic nomination for AG. Yes. Tina Peters, meanwhile, is in the White House with Donald Trump, right? So she continues to have this pedestal where she's lying about the 2020 election, trying to undermine confidence. Her first stop after prison was Steve Bannon's show. So,
it's a clue. Where I come from, we call that a clue. Yeah.
There's a clue.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the larger MO of a president who kind of runs things like a mob boss, which is, you have my back, I'll take care of you. Yeah. You did your time, right? Typical La Cosa Nostra. You did your time for me, you're in. And that's what we're seeing.
And on top of that, Frank, not only does he lean in like a mob boss, I totally agree with that, but they were also trying to cut checks for people who broke the law. Remember
the slush fund for felons. Yes.
Yeah, and J.D. Vance actually said, "Hey, one of a really good recipient for this slush fund for breaking the law for Trump would be Tina Peters." So we all know, the brakes got somewhat slowed down on that. This is a corrupt administration. They want people to have their backs regardless if it's legal or not.
And you good on you. You did not hold back. You did issue a public statement. Run through the highlights of that statement in terms of critiquing the bosses, the governor's decision there.
Yeah, and it wasn't just one public statement. We tried the best that we could to convince the governor that this was a really bad decision. So he started airing the idea that maybe he would commute the sentence for months. It was months and months long conversation in Colorado. So I asked to meet with him one-on-one. I've always had a decent relationship with him. That was refused. I was never able to sit down and talk to him directly about Tina Peters. He did call me 45 minutes before it was public that she was commuted. But outside of that, he wouldn't sit down. So I worked with the executive director of the Colorado Clerks Association, who's a former Republican clerk. The majority of county clerks in Colorado, they're Republican. And we sent a letter outlining everything. We then did a press conference. We tried everything that we could. It was not successful. But the big picture is when the DOJ is broken. The DOJ is broken. They're weaponized. They're going after their political enemies. They are not enforcing the law. So state law has to actually work to protect the rule of law and democracy. We were also really concerned that, what type of message does this send to not only those who would break the law for Trump, that even a blue state governor may bend over to Trump's desires, but also to all the election officials out there who have lived in an atmosphere of skyrocketed threats because of all this nonsense and conspiracies. So overall, and I think the big picture is like Trump does act like a mob boss. And if his orders are not legal, then he tries pressure. And we really just, as a United States, need to hold the line against him. And Tina Peters, to your viewers, may not be a big deal, but it's Tina Peters today, and it's the entire legal system the next day. And suddenly you have, federal officials running amok, and it just leads to a really bad, I think, situation for the country. So many reasons that it was a bad idea.
Couldn't agree more, and it's a disdain for the rule of law, and it signals to people, if you do this, it's a quid pro quo. You do this for me, I've got your back, and I'll take care of you. So first of all, you made an astonishing statement, I think, at least for me, which is the governor never sat down with you. Has he to this day still not articulated his thinking on his decision to commute her sentence?
He called me shortly before issuing the commutation, and he said to me what he has said publicly, that it was about the First Amendment, that Tina Peters was penalized for her speech. And honestly, he didn't let the judicial process play out. And I guess my position never was and never has been, she should serve 9 years. That wasn't my position. My position is she should get no special treatment. She is not someone who deserves special treatment. The Court of Appeals had just remanded the case back down to the district court. And the Court of Appeals said you can't take her election denialism into account in sentencing. You can take lack of remorse, but you can't take First Amendment beliefs. Instead of allowing the district court to resentence, like the Court of Appeals issued, the governor intervened. And that's my problem. Why does someone like Tina Peters, who never showed any type of remorse, who has been responsible for the biggest upheaval in democracy in Colorado in recent times, why does she deserve special treatment? Why does Trump get his way? They shouldn't get special treatment. We should have allowed the legal system to work this out. And if ultimately the court system said, she should leave a little early, I would have been fine with that, but not the special treatment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that there's a nuanced distinction there that I appreciate. Okay, let's go on to you mentioned a subject near and dear to my heart, which is the safety and security of people in your role. The Supreme Court justices in states. We're under a heightened threat environment with political extremism and violence. And it's not going to get any better. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But what is the role? You even chaired a Democratic Secretary of State Association. What is the role of Secretary of State as we address concerns about the upcoming midterms?
Yeah, the role is to prepare as much as possible. And I'll share with you, Frank, the hardest thing of the last 7.5 years of me serving as Secretary of State has been the threat environment. I am the highest ranking directly elected woman in the state of Colorado. After the insurrection, I started to get really bad threats. I don't think people had really seen that threat environment. And it wasn't just like one or two, it was like hundreds coming in. Jena, what's the size of your neck? I'm cutting the rope to hang you from the tree. Over and over and over and over. 4 men have actually been found guilty of threatening my life and have served time either in prison or jail. And I will tell you, in 2021, it was I know I'm a little older now, but like 2021, I'm late 30s, maybe I was mid 30s. And suddenly I'm getting all these threats and no one is taking them seriously. No one is looking for the threats. I didn't have any security coverage. And that's been one of the ways I've had to trailblaze, actually. I've had to fight to get the threat environment taken seriously for myself. And I hope women coming after me, it will be a little easier because, if they tell you they're going to come kill you, well, we should be going through those threats and assessing them appropriately. The threat environment has caused many county election officials to step down all across the country. We've seen about a 40% turnover in elected county clerks since 2020, in part because of the threat environment. So I worked with the legislature to do a couple things. We made it a crime to threaten or dox an election official. We made it a crime to have guns where people are voting. I released millions in security grants so folks could upgrade their security. Yeah. But on the wider thing of contingency is, I want your viewers to know everything that they are worried about for the 26th election. At least in the state of Colorado, we likely have a plan for it. So we've been working on all of our contingencies outside of just normal, like the political contingencies. What if Trump comes in and tries to seize voting equipment? What if there's ICE at the polls? What if? And we'll have a plan in place. We also worked with our legislature to shift things around a little bit. But I'll tell you, the attack on 2026, it's ongoing. It's already here. The DOJ has been suing states, multiple states, to try to get voter data, sensitive voter data. There's 2 executive orders now. Trump has issued unconstitutional, unlawful executive orders trying to meddle in the elections. So make no mistake that they're already trying to shift things, but we are winning, and we're going to continue to win to hold American democracy intact for the 26 elections and beyond.
We need to hear that, and I know my viewers needed to hear that as well. All is not despondency and darkness. People are working together and preparing. On that topic, tell me about Colorado and mail-in ballots and concerns around those, and our Postmaster General, who has said, "Yeah, I'm not delivering mail-in ballots unless you comply with Trump's demands."
So Coloradans, we have vote by mail for all. So if you're an active voter, you are sent a mail ballot. Then we also have in-person voting, a statewide voter registration database. So we're tracking in real time how someone is voting to make it convenient for Coloradans. And I want to start by sharing one fact. In the 2025 coordinated election, 98% of Republican voters chose to use their mail ballots. Trump likes his mail ballots, Republican voters, Democrats, unaffiliated, everybody likes their mail ballots. They're safe and they're secure. But I think that the bigger issue is Trump is trying to disenfranchise people. That's what this comes down to.
Of course.
They've been really fixated on voter rolls, on sensitive voter data. So over a year ago, they started demanding this data from all these states, Democratic Secretaries of State, a couple of Republicans. We all said no. We're not. The federal government doesn't have a right to this information. So Trump got mad. He then tries to get it in federal legislation. That went nowhere. So then he issues his second executive order on elections in his second term. Right. And he directs a couple things, and it's a little complicated. I'll try to stay high level. He directs the Department of Homeland Security to pull together a list of eligible citizens to receive mail ballots. He then directs states to send the Postal Service a list of people who are going to be sent a mail ballot. So the underlining is it kind of looks like a trap. What happens if someone is on your state's list that's not on DHS's list? And then on top of that, he directs the Department of Justice to then go prosecute election officials involved in sending ballots to folks that he doesn't want them to be sent to. So that's all being litigated. It's going. I think we're winning the initial stages. They're going to appeal. I think we're going to win. And then yesterday, they just keep on. The DOJ just keeps on going and threatening election officials. So I think the big picture is that Trump is trying a lot of antics, and I honestly do not think he is going to succeed. And speaking about leadership with the Democratic Association of Secretaries of State, I was chair in the 2022 cycle, and I woke up every morning thinking, man, there's a bunch of election deniers running in every battleground state where we have a race, nearly every battleground state. And I was so happy to defeat them in 2022 and get good, reasonable people in those positions who have held against Trump and his assault on democracy. So Democratic Secretaries of State, we're standing united, we're standing strong, and we're going to get the country through this election.
Awesome to hear. Late yesterday, we learned that DOJ is going to be ordered to send election monitors to about half a dozen states. Oh, surprise, most of them are Democratic strongholds, except for New Hampshire, that has a Republican governor, but Arizona, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and Virginia. What does the Secretary of State do if federal election monitors, whatever they are, show up in their state for the midterms?
You know, there's a right under the law for different type of monitoring, right? So poll watchers, the whole election process has bipartisan oversight over it. Election judges, they're paired up in bipartisan pairs working in administering the election. Poll watchers, there's a right for poll watchers. I would just say the DOJ also did this in 2025. If you remember, it was in New Jersey and somewhere else. So, you know, we'll see what comes. The basic underlining thing is that voter intimidation is illegal. Election interference is illegal. As long as people are following the law, there is no problem. If people don't follow the law, then I am sure every state will take the steps necessary. But again, a lot of this, I think, is signaling, right? Why does Steve Bannon say ICE is going to be circling every polling location? I would venture that that is unlikely to happen. That would require, it's unlikely. If it does, we're going to take action. But I think one of the things that really worries me is that the threats of intimidation actually suppresses the vote. And we cannot allow this administration to scare people out of voting. And honestly, Frank, I hope it pisses people off. Enough to stand in line if they're in different states.
It could absolutely backfire on them. And yeah, I mean, if you don't want brown people to vote, threaten a hassle when they show up in the parking lot at a polling place. But I have to say, not to get into a tabletop exercise, and we only have about a minute left, but you know, you've got the sovereign, you've got the state, and if those federal agents show up, or God forbid, you know, troops, I mean, what a face-off that would be, state versus federal. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and you know, the fact that state secretaries of state, along with attorney generals, county clerks, governors, are having to plan for that scenario for federal interference in the administration of elections is outrageous. But again, you know, I can't. I would say I obviously can't promise that things won't happen. What I can promise is, at least in the state of Colorado, we have a plan to respond. Again, it's federally illegal for the military to interfere with the peaceful administration of elections. It's illegal at the state level. So we'll all be ready to go. And again, we cannot allow their chaos and their threats to suppress the vote. People really need to show up in 2026. Everything is on the line.
So, Secretary, you have given us, in a limited amount of time, some hope, and also some gratitude that someone like you is doing what you're doing and doing so passionately. Thanks for what you're doing. We hope to have a longer conversation with you sometime, and best wishes for your campaign for state attorney general there in Colorado.
Thank you, Frank. And thank you for all that you're doing. I think with your background, your voice is so important in this moment. And I don't know, a conversation for another time, but you actually gave me some really good advice about the security situation I was having over Twitter maybe like 5 years ago, which I really appreciate.
Wow, so, you have a good memory.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Of course, yeah. Best wishes. Stay safe. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was Secretary of State in Colorado and State Attorney General candidate Jena Griswold. And, you know, I've never had a one-on-one discussion with the Secretary, and I'm even more impressed now than I was just reading her bio and all that she's been through. You can see, can't you, the importance, the essential importance of the role of Secretary of State, something that typically, quite frankly, over the years, has kind of not gotten any attention from people. Like, what do they do, and who are they, and do I bother voting for them? Now we see the absolute essentiality of that role, and the role of a state attorney general, and of course, state Supreme Court justices. All of these issues we covered in the last 30 minutes will inevitably become the subject of court battles as we get to November. And as you heard the secretary say, ultimately the law will likely prevail. It's the hassle, it's the voter suppression attempts, it's the timeout. We've got to go to court, timeout again. We have to go to court again. That I get concerned about. And then ultimately, as you heard about the tabletop exercise, no one wants to do, but they are doing, over the potential showdown between federal and state authorities that really would make us look like a third world country to the globe. A lot going on here. You heard the secretary's take quickly on Graham Platner. And just my thoughts as we kind of finish out the time here. The idea of investigating someone obviously is something near and dear to my heart, because I obviously did that for a living. And even as a young agent, and then as a leader and senior executive in the FBI, did conduct and oversee very sensitive background investigations on nominees for very high-ranking federal office. And but again, let's be clear. The FBI does not do background investigations for elected officials. That's by design. We believe, and boy, would it be very true now, wouldn't it, that our institutions of government should not be weighing in. I got asked this a lot, and I covered it in my first book, The FBI Way. Hey, how did President Trump get into office? Who allowed that to happen? Well, we all did, but no one. There's a myth out there that somehow members of Congress and the president and the vice president they all get vetted via FBI backgrounds. They do not, and in fact, they're largely handed their clearances. If they've been elected in a democracy, we say the people made this decision. And the folks in suits inside buildings in D.C. aren't going to say, no, he can't be a congressperson, she can't be a congressperson, that can't be your president. They would flunk a background. No, we don't have that. But so then this might be apples and oranges, but when we look at Graham Platner, and I look at it, not politically, but through the lens of an investigator, you have to ask the question about the degree to which political vetting meets the moment, right? And you heard Secretary Griswold talk about the digital age, which I really hadn't even given a lot of thought to these days. It's, my God, if you pull everybody's texts and posts on Instagram, and how about replies? How about, have you ever tried to like unreply or delete? Shouldn't have said it that way. That came across wrong, right? And now we're talking about far more serious allegations against a candidate for U.S. Senate. And again, the question I have, and I don't necessarily have answers, is there's got to be a better way. What is that better way? Short of having actually they should have professional career investigators, retired or otherwise, that would be my opinion, conducting some of these high-level candidate backgrounds, right? No one's going to want to polygraph a candidate. Hey, did you ever sexually harass, assault, rape a woman? And then even more complicated is someone is asserting that because of their combat experience and PTSD, maybe they forgot. By the way, I'm not buying that. I'm sorry. I know folks with PTSD. And gosh, I don't know. How many times can you sexually assault, harass, or even rape a woman and blame it on PTSD? And even if that's true, right? That blame, that causality, is that someone who should hold high office? It's, again, I'm seeing it as an investigative challenge, and it's going to be increasingly challenging in this digital age. If you've got ideas, shoot me a direct message on Substack and say, look, I think I know how to do this vetting thing. But as I said, it's garbage in, garbage out. If the candidate sits down and either can't remember or is outright lying to you, right? Give me everything that could come out that could be horribly embarrassing and derail you. And you run through the things. You run through the things. How are you perceived by women? What are your bad relationships? Who should we talk to? Right? What we do in FBI backgrounds for nominees, presidential nominees, for like say cabinet positions, right? That's where a field office stops everything they're doing, and you cringe when you hear the president has nominated for Attorney General of the United States somebody who lives in your field office territory. You're like, oh no, the next 4 weeks of my life are going to be intense because everyone goes out and just tears up the town. And what the FBI does in those situations is they keep asking citizens who they're interviewing, who else should I talk to? Who else should I talk to? Right? Oh, have you talked to the ex-girlfriend, Sally? No, we don't know anything about Sally. He's not the candidate, the nominee did not put Sally down on his form of people. Yeah, because you need to talk to her. That's part of what the FBI does. But did that work in the original Justice Kavanaugh investigation? When I say original, I mean back when he was nominated for a federal judge, right? That was the first one on him. And I don't know what happened with that. Do you, I don't know. You don't get to those people if you don't ask the hard questions. And I think increasingly on the political side now of vetting, those hard questions have to be asked of people, and you interview. And I don't think enough interviews are done on the vetting side of the house for political candidates. Anyway, that's where we are. I love the fact that we had Jena Griswold on today. It almost makes you want to establish residency in Colorado so you can vote for her for Attorney General. I'm not suggesting that you do that. Thanks for joining us. We'll have another show on what I call Frank Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday, where we wrap up the week's news. Thanks for joining us. Take care.